Hello, community. I'm Javi. I'm very happy to finally greet you with a story of my own. A few years ago, when I was in high school, I lived with my parents in Iztapalapa. I used to take the Line 8 subway to get to and from school and my job at a carpentry shop. Everything was so far away, but that was just my luck. One night, returning home after a long day, I had an experience I still can't explain. It was around 10:30. I boarded the subway at the Viga station. The car was almost empty. I didn't pay much attention either. I only remember getting on the emptiest one. I sat down and took out a book from my backpack, trying to make the most of my travel time. When I arrived at the Patlico station, 3 girls got on. I couldn't help but notice them. They were very pale and dressed like little girls, although their hair wasn't blonde, but dark brown. One of them was carrying a small child, no more than 2 years old. They sat near me, and one of them, the one not carrying the child, looked at me and smiled. "Is that a good book?" she asked, referring to a book by Carlos Fuentes that I was reading for school. I replied that I was just starting it, but that it was interesting more than I expected. She smiled and told me her father had been an avid reader of those kinds of books, but that he had already passed away. She said that if I ever needed any, she could give me the ones no one in her house was going to read anymore. Of course, I didn't think she meant it, so I told her thanks, that would be fine. "Get off with us and come with us. It's a couple of blocks." "You come with us and then head home?" she told me. Something about it seemed very strange. As much as she might have wanted someone to accompany her not to walk alone on a dangerous street, it was extremely odd to invite a stranger out of the blue. I thanked her but told her I had to be home early. She insisted, saying it wouldn't take long, that I'd be back in 10 minutes. That one day her mom was going to throw away all the books and that I'd be doing them a favor. Her voice was very soft, almost hypnotic, somehow making the whole conversation seem almost normal even though it clearly wasn't. I felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to reject her without seeming rude. At the next station, Esquadron 201, 3 young people in uniform got on 2 men and a woman. They sat in front of me and started looking at me. Then the woman started whispering with the others. She watched me with a worried expression. When we arrived at the Iztapalapa station, the 3 girls got up to get off. Before leaving the car, the one who had spoken to me turned and said, "I'll see you soon." Her voice this time, despite maintaining the same tone, sounded different, like there was something in her throat. I shuddered. After the doors closed and we moved forward, the kids who had gotten on at Esquadron 201 approached me. "Are you okay?" the girl asked. I said yes, even more confused. I don't like talking to people, and now these were the second strangers I had to interact with. "But you weren't with them, were you?" "With the girls with that ugly doll?" I told her no, that they'd chatted me up about the book. But at that moment I realized something. "You mean the girls with the baby, right? The ones who just got off?" "Which baby?" "The ones who got off, the one who said goodbye to you. They were carrying a hideous cardboard doll with a badly painted face. Is that what you mean by the baby?" I remained silent, not knowing what to say. I had clearly seen a baby. It had moved. It had seen me. It was very cute. I almost grabbed its cheeks. It looked so adorable. Another woman sitting at the back of the car suddenly started laughing and told me they weren't carrying a baby, that they were witches, and that it wasn't the first time she'd seen them. As soon as she said that, one of the boys in uniform suddenly screamed excitedly and started hitting the other one on the back. "See, I told you they were witches. That's how they almost took my dad once." At that moment, the other 2 women in the car turned around, and I felt scared but also very ashamed. For a moment, there was a kind of unspoken understanding between those of us who were there together in that car surrounded by darkness until somehow we understood that we all had to get out into it, into that darkness, and that there were witches nearby. "You were saved, kid?" "That's how they take them to the Cerro de la Estrella. I don't know what happens up there, but no one who goes with them usually comes back." When we got to my station, I got off the subway. I walked home feeling a fear I hadn't felt in a long time, or maybe ever. On one hand, I felt like I had been saved from something terrible, that they had gotten off miles before, that they were far from me. But on the other hand, as I walked, I couldn't help but look at that dark street behind me. I couldn't help thinking that someone was following me in the darkness. I couldn't help but imagine the dogs barking in the distance, barking at them as they walked on the rooftops near me, waiting for an opportunity to take me. I still remember it, and I still get scared like a child. I'm not at all ashamed to say that they scare me, that the greatest terror in my life is witches. Thank you for staying with us, community. Thank you for continuing to listen. And this story that just happened is very similar to other cases we've heard before. So if you have something similar, share it. Remember, only true fans get this far. Honestly, most of the comments tell us that not everyone can endure a full episode of Tales of the Night, which is strange because I know for us it's already normal and we're used to it. But for the people who are just discovering it, well, it seems a bit intense. That's very interesting because you who are already part of the community know that scaring isn't the main goal of this project. It's about keeping our stories alive. And that's why we really like the story we're going to close with today. A great story I hope you enjoy. And again, you know I have to remind you that you can find my book in every bookstore near you physically or online. The way you've supported is one of the most beautiful things you've given us, truly. I hope there are more surprises soon. Because although Tales of the Night will never stop being this podcast you enjoy, we also want to try different things. But don't worry, you know that everything experimental, like the book, like the comic, won't change what you already love. That will stay the same forever. Any new ideas will be in other formats and hopefully on other platforms that we hope you'll enjoy too. But the core of it all will always be this Project Tales of the Night as a vehicle to tell your stories. We hope you stay tuned. I love you all very much. We continue. My name is Diego, and I am 23 years old. I recently moved in with my aunt in Iztapalapa to a house very, very close to Cerro de la Estrella. It wasn't for nothing. My mom went to work in the United States, and I had to finish my degree here in Mexico City. It's staying alone in an apartment I couldn't afford, so I moved in with her. Like when I was a kid and came to spend the Christmas holidays. Her house always gave me peace. Although it is quite old, it is very well maintained. And the garden gives me a very good vibe, especially the one in front, which is always full of perfectly arranged plants, smelling of rue, rosemary, and wet earth. My aunt says they are protective plants, that the hill, although beautiful, has things that are better kept away, and that there are plants that don't let anything try to get in. Since I was a kid, I heard that this hill has something strange, that you can see lights in the early morning like balls of fire. Some say that there are shadows that move where there is no one, that you see people go up at night but never come down. My cousins told me things to scare me, but I also knew they weren't making some of them up. In particular, one story always intrigued me, that of a woman, a witch, who floated on moonless nights with her arms outstretched like a virgin. But there was nothing sacred about her. Rather, it seemed that she was floating in that shape, in that position, to mock the faith of those who saw her. A silhouette that climbed toward the hill without moving a muscle, moving so far away that it was lost in the hill, in the darkness at the top. I never knew where that story came from, but all the kids on that street and around it that I used to play soccer with had heard it at some point, even though no one had ever seen it. And they all said the same thing: if you do happen to meet her, don't let her see you, because if she does, something will stick with you. You'll go crazy. You'll never be able to stop watching it. That particular story had perhaps never scared me so much, especially because it was told to us several times by a taxi driver who sometimes played soccer with us, a man who always seemed to be drunk and who told us that story a little differently every time he told it. That era of legends, although very striking and interesting, seemed more like ghost stories to scare children until someone very close to me, someone who had no reason to lie to me, told me something about it. It was one night when I was super stressed out about school, complaining about everything, when my cousin Ivan, who was visiting, came to greet me. He is my Aunt Cia's son, but he no longer lived there. He had gone to the north of the city. I was now the one who slept in his old room. I remember I was in the kitchen. My aunt had already fallen asleep, and I couldn't concentrate on my notes. It seemed strange to me that didn't leave. He had said goodbye to his mother. I thought he had already gone, but I got up to turn off the TV, which was distracting me, and there he was still at the window, opening the curtain a little, with his eyes on the hill. I asked him if everything was okay, and he told me he regretted leaving, that it was late, and that he'd better stay in the living room. I told him no, that he should sleep in his old room. After all, I was going to be working well into the early morning. But he told me he didn't like his room, the window, that view. I swear at that moment it seemed like he was joking. His face, his tone, it was like he was about to tell me a horror story. But he wasn't like that at all. And then he told me the following. Don't laugh, but I need you to forget for a moment all the times when we were kids and I told you not to believe people's stories and all the things that were said to appear around here. Seriously, I need to tell you something that only a friend knows. And I feel like I have to get it out, and you're going to trust me more than he did. Because I feel like the day I told him, he didn't make fun of me just because I was right in front of him. But I'm going to tell you. Just promise that you're going to believe me. I laughed lightly, nervously. I told him to go for it, that I wasn't going to be scared that easily. But when I saw the way he told me, the seriousness on his face, his watery eyes, his cracking voice, my smile disappeared. What he told me happened in 2016 when he was 20 one night. He was returning from a party in Ermita with some friends. He had to drive because he had taken his girlfriend, but after dropping her off at her house, he returned alone. He always preferred someone else to drive so he could drink. And because there was something about those streets near the hill that made him very nervous at night. It wasn't the darkness. He wasn't referring to those hours of the night when there was no one outside anymore, when he felt completely alone, when he felt that whatever he saw, whatever happened to him, would happen only to him. Everything was peaceful until, getting close to the house, the main street he always takes was closed. There were 2 police cars and an ambulance. He never knew what happened, but he couldn't get through. So he turned around and went down a side street that goes up parallel, closer to the hill and alley. I never liked that street, he told me. Not because of ghosts or anything like that, but because it's very lonely. It has houses, but many of them seem half abandoned, and it's all poorly lit with old street lights and hanging wires. But it was already around 2:30, and he just wanted to get home. He said he was going slowly, with the volume of the music very low. The tires were going over the potholes with some difficulty, and then, without warning, the car began to vibrate, as if something had fallen on it. But at the same time, as if something had gotten stuck between the tires. Not a blow, but as if something had grabbed onto the roof, as if something was weighing on it. And at the same time, as if it had run over something. He braked, his blood drained. He thought the car had been damaged, or worse, that something had fallen on it. And that's when my cousin told me the following, his voice cracking in a way I couldn't remember. Like when he was a kid, when he told me how his dad used to hit him. She passed over me, Diego. She was coming from the back, kind of toward the hood. And when she passed right over me, I could see her very clearly without making a sound, without moving her arms or anything floating, as if someone were pulling her by strings. But even if I tell you she's a witch, she wasn't a witch like in the movies. She was something different, something real. The only thing moving was her clothes because her hair was just glued on as if it were a photograph. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I saw her. She looked like a woman, or something that looked like a woman with long, very straight white hair. She was wearing something black, like a dirty, worn robe or tunic that moved in the wind, but she didn't. She wasn't moving. Her body was completely rigid, as if she were a floating mannequin but with presence, with something very heavy that could be felt around her. The most horrifying thing was her arms extended to her sides, motionless as if she were hanging from the shoulders in a downward hugging position, but without effort. I swear, Diego, I don't know if she was a witch or a ghost. I don't know if she was something more. I only know that I saw her pass over the car, and when I saw her cross, I knew I shouldn't move. That I had to act as if I didn't exist. It was as if my whole body was telling me that if I made even a noise, she was going to see me and I didn't want to face her. I didn't want her to turn around. So I stayed staring at her back, her white hair, and the way she slowly climbed toward the hill. He told me he saw her ascend as if the hill were calling her. That she wasn't flying fast. She didn't disappear. She just drifted away little by little, floating motionless like a doll until she was lost in the blackness of the night. When he could breathe again, he moved forward with the car. He didn't want to look in the rearview mirror. He didn't want to look at the hill. He focused on the 3 meters in front of the car, and that's how he got to his house. He got in without making a sound. He didn't speak to anyone. He went weeks without sleeping well. My aunt thought it was because of the party, because of his job, or because he'd broken up with his girlfriend again, but he knew exactly what it was. And there, years later, in that house, he told me like a secret, like something he needed to share before it was lost. Before he went crazy, as if for some reason he wanted to keep that memory alive. And since that day, I couldn't look at the hill the same way. All the legends, all the tales, all the stories about witches I'd been told since I was a child, since I didn't live there, now looked very different. Once, just before going to sleep, I got up to go to the bathroom and passed by the laundry room window. I looked out without thinking at the hill. It was a moonless night. For a moment, in a very distant community, I saw a kind of light moving slowly across the hill. I only saw that light, which had no shape, but I imagined it clearly, as if it were a floating woman. I know it was my imagination, but I also know that now that story is part of my life, part of my fears, because I now live here. And I am part of this. Like all of us who live at the foot of Cerro de la Estrella, all of us without fail.